go through the discussion of the memo for this paper, the paper 2, which was written today on the 4th of September 2024. Right. As usual, your host, you have Conrad Mupinguri, and I'm going to start as usual by emphasizing some of the instructions that you should pay attention to when you are answering the paper. Right. As usual, I would focus on all the instructions. I hope you are all familiar as learners to what you are expected of when you are answering such a geography paper. But my emphasis will go to instruction number 9 and instruction number 10. Right. Instruction number 9, it emphasizes that you should answer in full sentences, except when we have to state, name, identify, or list. Those are the only exceptions which are given where you cannot write full sentences. When the question says state, or when the question says name, or identify, or list. Those are low order questions where you can just write one word depending on the context of the response required. Right. Which will mean that whenever you're answering a question which is supposed to be presented in full sentence, you should present it in a full sentence with what we call a factor, which is a geographical response to the question, or which is a geographical fact answering the question. And we also have what we call a qualifier. So you should be answering your questions in that format of you presenting what we call in your response, you should have a factor, and your factor should be supported by a qualifier. That is how you write your full sentences if you are answering a question. You have to give a factor, which is a geographical fact answering the question, and you have to qualify that factor. How is it relevant geographically, or you add details to the factor to make it a full response to the question. Right, that is instruction number 9. Then instruction number 10, it says units of measurement must be indicated in your final answer. For example, 1020 hectopascals, or 14 degrees Celsius, or 45 meters. These are equally important. The units of measurement, you should never ignore them when you are answering the questions that require you to present responses in the units of measurement. Or when you're doing your map calculations, you should always remember that you should be presenting the units of measurement that you are measuring in. Right. Without wasting time, we know as usual, our paper 2 comprises of 2 sections. Section A, which is the theory section, made up of question number 1, which is rural and urban settlements, 60 marks, and economic geography of South Africa, which is also 60 marks, question number 2. Then we'll go to section B, where we have question number 3 out of 30, which is geographical skills and techniques. That is the setup of our geography paper 2 question paper. Right, let's go to the questions firstly. Right, we are going to look at the first question on rural and urban settlements, question number 1.1. Various options are provided for as possible answers to the following questions. Choose the answer and write only the letter A to D next to the question number. For example, 1.11 to 1.88 in brackets in the answer book, e.g. 1.19, response is D. Right, let's try to interpret the figure given below and try to figure out what is happening in this fig here. Right. Before we answer these questions, we should be able to interpret and be able to figure out what is happening in that fig. We should be able to use geographical facts and be able to use geographical evidence to interpret what is happening on that particular fig before we attempt the questions. Right. This is basically on settlements. You can see that on our key, we have this line representing roads. This is the key for a road, a conventional sign for a road for our fig, and this is the symbol for a house. So it means here we have at B, and at C we also have some houses situated at B here, and also we have some other house at D here, and these are the distinct houses which are on their own. And also at A, it also tend to have those houses at that particular point. So when you're looking at settlement, basically we are worried about 1, the settlement pattern, and 2, we're worried about the shape of the settlement. Those are the two distinct things that we should be worried about when we're looking at settlements. Right. When we're looking at a settlement pattern, right, I want you to note these two facts here before I explain or before we go to the questions. Right. There is what you call settlement pattern. Right. We are looking at a pattern of a settlement. We are looking at one. We have a clustered pattern. And two, we have a dispersed. Those are the two patterns of settlements that we have. A cluster meaning to say the housing units are close to each other. They are closely pegged. That is a cluster. They are closely spaced from each other like that. When we talk of a dispersed, you are saying maybe one house is there, another one is there, another one is there, another one is there, maybe another one is there. They are further apart from each other. We're worried about the distance from one unit to the other, the distance from another to the other, and the distance from one unit to the other. You can see that there is relatively longer distance between the settlements. But here, they are just in close proximity. So this is a pattern which we call a clustered settlement, and this is what we call a dispersed settlement. Then, on shapes of settlements, we have a number of shapes based on how the settlements are arranged, how the units are arranged in a settlement. By the units here, we're looking at the houses in a settlement. How are they arranged in that particular settlement? Because their arrangement is going to give us a particular shape. Right. We have shapes like linear. We have some settlements which will appear in form of a linear settlement. This is now about shape, the shape of a settlement. Linear, we're coming from the word line, which means we find our houses in a line. Maybe they are along a road, or maybe they are along a river, or it's a rail line. They appear in a line. That is a linear settlement. Then we also have a circular. We are saying the units are in a circular, like that. Maybe there's a focal point here. Maybe it's a source of water. Then the settlement is developing around the source of water in a circular shape like that. That becomes a circular shape for a settlement. Then you also have the T-junction, where we have one mode of transport here, transport route and another transport route there. Maybe it's an intersection of major roads. Then you find that there are settlements developing along the road networks like that and developing in that side, giving us a T shape. This is what we call a T-junction. And then we also have, besides the T-junction, we also have the other form of a shape of a settlement, which we say it's a cross road. At a crossroad, we are saying we have interlinked transport network crossing each other. There is an interlinking of transport networks, which will tend to give us a cross shape. And on such, the settlement develops along the intersection of the transport networks. Maybe it's a road and maybe we have a rail line which is going in that direction. And then we have settlements situated like that, located in that manner, right? Like this. These are the houses. This gives us a crossroads shape. Crossroads in the sense that the roads are crossing or the transport routes are crossing each other and the settlements are along those transport networks. Then maybe lastly, we can also, a composite of this, we have what we call a stellar settlement shape. A stellar coming from the word star. When we're talking of a stellar here in this instance, we are saying it's stellar, and the stellar coming from a star. So a star, maybe we have a number of interlinked transport routes, maybe like that. Then we also have some settlements developing along this route, some developing along that route, and some developing along that route. This will end up giving us something like a star at the end. So this becomes a stellar shape. Right, that is the basic idea behind settlement pattern and settlement shape. So let's go to the questions quickly and try to identify the correct responses based on what we have briefly explained. Right. The first question is saying the pattern of the settlement at A is that if you come at A here, you can see what is happening there. At A, there's one house, another house is there, another house is there. And we talked about a pattern of a settlement. We said a pattern can either be nucleated or dispersed. So in this instance, without wasting time, we are seeing that the units are away from each other. That qualifies to be a dispersed settlement at A, as you can see. Then we go to number 112, the shape of the settlement at B. Right, if we check at B here, right, what can we say about the shape of the settlement which is being realized at B? You see there's this road here and there's another road here, and those roads are giving us a cross at B. So that qualifies to be a cross road settlement, right. Then we go on to the next question. The next question is number 113. The shape of the settlement at C was determined by the, at C, you see here, the houses are aligned in that direction and are also aligned in that direction. What is the main influence of those houses appearing in a line? Is because of this road here. So the correct response is the road, because our key is telling us that the line is representing a road. Right, we go to the next question. Right, the next question is talking about the hierarchy of settlements. When we talk of a hierarchy of settlements, we are looking at the arrangement of settlement according to a size and complexity of the settlement. Right, and on our hierarchy of settlements, we start with the smallest settlement. That is the one which is on the bottom of the hierarchy. And it means that a settlement which is at the bottom of the hierarchy is the one that has got the least functions. It's the one that provides the fewest functions. And when we're talking of numbers, is the one that has got the largest number of those settlements. Those settlements are in large numbers. They appear in large numbers. Maybe if you're taking it from a provincial scale or from a national scale, we tend to find that those settlements are the most ones in terms of their numbers. But as we go downwards from the bottom of the hierarchy, you tend to find that the number of services here, like what is indicated by this arrow, it's showing that the services will decrease in number as we move from up the hierarchy going to the bottom, which means the bottom one is the one with the least services. But when we talk of increasing population, we are also seeing that is the opposite. This one has got the least population at the bottom, and the one at the top of the hierarchy is the one that has got the highest population. And then the number of settlements you can see here, the wider the area occupied by the settlement, it also means that the number of settlements are many. So the lowest settlement is the one that has got the large numbers of such a kind of a settlement. So we have the farmsteads, which is the lowest, and then we have the hamlet, the village, the town, small town, a large town, a city, a conurbation, then we go to a capital city. Right. So let's go to our question. Our question is saying, number 114, the settlement at D in the image on page 3, we go to D, analyze D here. You can see that D is an isolated homestead here. It's just on its own, very far away from the other settlements. So this qualifies to be the lowest settlement, which is an isolated farmstead. Right, let's go to the question. It says, at D is dash on the hierarchy due to dash in the number of services. Right, so if you check there, this one is lower on the hierarchy because it's qualifying to come here. And also, due to the number of services, we're saying the number of services are decreasing, which means it has the lowest number of services here. So our correct response should match with item number 2, which is lower. It's lower on the hierarchy. And why is it lower? Because it has the decrease in the number of services. So we are matching item number 2 with item number 4 to get C as our correct response for that question. So C qualifies to be a correct response. I will move on to the next question. Right. The next question is telling us about the type of farming which is happening here. By mere interpretation of the info of the fig, you can see that there is a farmer here who is plowing on this far end here, and you can see also that there's some form of cultivation which has taken place on this part. And you can also see that there's this other member of that family who is milking a cow. And you can also see this other animal who is appearing here, which appears more to be a pig, which is feeding there, and all those activities happening around. If you check here, you can also see there's evidence of maybe of some chickens or some other poultry animals which are just close to this fig here, which are also feeding from that side. So by mean interpretation of this fig, we can see that this is some form of subsistence farming, and which is encompassed of some form of mixed farming. There is a variety of farming activities that are taking place there. So let's go to the question. The question is saying, in the diagram below, the dash farmer is practicing dash farming. The farmer here cannot be a commercial farmer because one is using the symbol tools, is using an ox-drawn plow here. And also, if you check whatever is happening here, does not qualify to be a commercial farm. Even if you check the land size, there's no mechanization which is taking place there. Also, the land size is also small. So that is a subsistence farmer. That is item number 1. And is practicing what kind of farming? Is it monoculture or mixed farming? We've talked about the nature of farming which is happening there. It's some form of mixed farming. So it's item number 1 and item number 4, which is option number B, which matches subsistence with mixed farming. Right, to go to the next question. The choice of a site for a rural settlement can be determined by dash. The choice of a site of a settlement, right? The correct response there qualifies to be the aspect. By aspect, you are looking at the orientation of the slope, where the slope faces, right? We know that using the climatological argument, we have the north-facing slope in the southern hemisphere and the south-facing slope. The north-facing slope is the one that receives more insolation and is the one that is warmer. So we tend to find that because of slope aspect, we tend to find some settlements developing on the north-facing slope in the southern hemisphere because of aspect, right? All those other responses, they relate to situation of a settlement, like closeness to a railway station. That is a situation of a settlement. Or connection to other settlements, that is a situation. Right, we go to the next question. Urbanization refers to the dash. Right, if we check that question, the first response is saying movement of people from rural areas to cities for better opportunities. And the other response is saying increasing percentage of the total population are living in urban areas. Right, the difference here is on the concept of increasing percentage and of movement. That is where we distinguish those two responses. Without that, we might not be able to figure out exactly the difference of those two responses. But those responses are geographically different. The movement of people from rural areas to cities for better opportunities, that is rural-urban migration, not urbanization. It's migration when we're talking of movement. But now when we're looking at the increasing in the percentages of people staying in urban areas, or the increase in the numbers of people staying in urban areas, that is now urbanization. So our correct response for that question is response number B, because of the difference between movement and increasing percentage. Right, we go to number 118. Number 118 says, a central place provides goods and services to the surrounding. The correct response is rural areas. When we talk of a central place, we are saying is an urban area, which is a hub of activity for the surrounding rural area, which means the neighboring rural area or the surrounding rural area accesses its basic services and needs from the nearby urban area. You can find examples of those towns in the remote areas or in farmlands. If we have one particular town which is surrounded by a farming land, that town acts as a central place, because all those people in the rural areas, they will tend to find their basics, or they will tend to acquire their services and goods from that nearby town. Like if they want to go and buy groceries, they will access them from that particular. If they want to go and do banking, they want to go and access maybe healthcare, they will get all the services from that particular urban area. So it serves as a central place. It's a central place for the surrounding rural area. Right, we go on to number 1.2. Number 1.2 is basically based on the classification of urban settlements according to those different classifications. Right. I'll just try to highlight and explain the responses given here before we look at the responses as to the question. Right. A specialized town. If we are looking at a specialized town, we are saying it's an urban settlement which has developed mainly because of one particular activity happening in that particular town. For example, we have mining towns. Those towns have developed because there is composite mining happening in that particular settlement. It was because of mining that the town came to existence. Or we have tourist destination towns. The town got to exist because of tourist activities. That is a specialized town. There is one main activity that is happening in that particular town, which has brought it to existence. That is a specialized town. And a central place, we have defined it. We are saying it's an urban area or a town which is responsible for the provision of services to the surrounding rural area. Then we have a gateway town or a gap town. We are saying here there is a passage, maybe it's a mountain range, and maybe there's just a pass along the mountain range. For people to access point A, from point A to go to the other side of the mountain range B, they have to pass through one focal point, one connecting point. So a settlement will develop here as a gap town or as a gateway town, because that is the passageway through which we can access the other side. Or let's say there's a major bridge along a big river. A settlement can develop on that major bridge because that is the crossing point to get from one side to the other. So that becomes a gap town. Then we have a break of bulk. A break of bulk, we are saying, for a break of bulk town, it has come to existence because of an interchange in the modes of transport. For example, the harbor towns, those towns along the coastal areas, they are there because of the harbor activities taking place. There is a transition in the mode of transport of the transportation of goods and services. Maybe we are looking at goods which are coming from the cargo via ship, and they need to be broken into smaller units to be transported via railway or via road. So we have settlements developing in such areas. They are called break of bulk. Break of bulk meaning to say we have cargo which is coming in very large quantities, which needs to be broken down to suit the change in the transport mode. We cannot have the same quantities from the ship getting into a truck or getting into a train. That is not possible. So we need to break the bulk to make it fit into the transport mode in which it is going to be transported. So we also have break of bulk towns. Then we have junction towns. Junction towns basically are looking at junction towns. The term junction suggests that there is a meeting of some transport modes. Maybe it's a road network which is meeting a rail network, or maybe two rail networks which are meeting at that particular point. That becomes a junction town. A settlement that develops here, that becomes a junction town. Right. So basically, I think we have highlighted on. Then we have the last one, the trade and transport town. Also here, the main activity that has led to the development of the settlement is because of trading activities. We can also mention of the typical example of the harbors again. They are also trade and transport towns because of trade happening there, trading activities, exportation and importation of goods and services, and also because of the transition in the transport mode that will lead to the development of such an urban settlement, which is classified as a trade and a transport town. Right. So basically, those are the basic urban settlements that we can have based on those classifications. So let's quickly go to our questions and try to figure out the correct responses for such questions. Number 1 to 1, if we check number 1 to 1, we can see that it's some form of a bay town. And the question is saying, what kind of a settlement is that one, if we are to classify it according to specialized town and a central place? This qualifies to be a specialized town. There is one main activity which is likely to be happening on that particular, in that particular town, and not to regard it as a central place. So this one qualifies to be a specialized town. We go to the next one. You can see these containers which are being taken from the cargo ship and being loaded onto a truck, or the other way around. So what is this? We've talked about that. This is a break of a bulk town because of the transition in the mode of transport. Right, we move on. Number 1, 2, 3, it says Worcester. This is typical, though the image, the map is not very clear, but it's talking about Worcester and Western Cape. Right, if you talk of Worcester, you know that Worcester is a gap town. Why is it a gap town? Because where it is situated, it's situated in the Bread River Valley, where the N1 and the rail line pass through the gap in the Hex River Mountain. That is where basically we find Worcester in the Western Cape. It's when we are crossing the Hex River mountain range. There is a road network, which is our N1, and there's also a railway line, which passed through the Hex River mountain across that particular gap in Worcester. So it qualifies to be a gap town. Why? Move on to the next one. We come here. Right. It says number 1, 2, 4. This is Kronstadt. Kronstadt is what kind of a settlement? Is it a specialized town or a central place? Right. When you talk of Kronstadt basically qualifies to be a central place. If you know the location of Kronstadt is located basically is a hub for the surrounding areas of Free State. In the Free State area is the hub of the whole surrounding areas where it is situated. So it qualifies to be a central place. It provides basic services to the surrounding area of Free State. Then we move on to number 125. Right. 125, it says DR is a major junction where Cape Town, Kimberley main lines meet, a line from Port Elizabeth and another from Uppington and Namibia. We have been given the response here. There is a major junction, so we don't need to worry much about this because the response has been given for us. The correct response is a junction town. Right, we go to number 126. Right, it's about Stellenbosch in the Western Cape. You check there, Stellenbosch in the Western Cape. The first school opened in 1683, but education in the town began in earnest in 1859 with the opening of the oldest school for girls in South Africa. So what kind of a settlement is that given the description of Stellenbosch? But Stellenbosch, we know that we have the Stellenbosch University, and it has developed as a result of the particular industry of education. It was because of the development of education in that particular area, which led to the growth of that settlement into becoming a city or a town. So up to now, Stellenbosch is also still known for being an academic hub. So it's a specialized town. The core activity happening there is mainly educational activities. Then we go to number 127. It's talking about Gibera Harbour, which is in Port Elizabeth, right? We've talked about the harbors and we have talked about how they can be classified. The correct response is response number Z, which is a trade and transport town. It's because of trading activities at the harbor and also because of the transportation of goods and services happening from the cargo ships to road or railway transport. So basically that is the classification of those settlements according to the given classifications. Right, we need to move on to the next question as quick as is possible. Right, we go to number 1.3. It talks about land redistribution. Right, there are concepts that we need to understand when we're looking at the aspect of land. We have basically land reform, we have land tenure reform, we have land redistribution, we have land restitution. Those concepts, you need to be familiar with them and you should be able to distinguish clearly between one and the other so that you don't interchange them wrongly or you don't mix or use one for the other in a wrong geographical context. Right, without wasting time, we go to our questions. The text is given, land reform is necessary in post-apartheid South Africa to help address inherited historical injustice, especially those resulting from land dispossession of the black majority. It involves the restitution of land to individuals and communities who lost their homes and land due to forced removals. It also creates secure rights to land held by the black majority. In addition, the process aims to create a more equitable pattern of land ownership. Right, that is the text given there as our infographic. Right, we go to The infographic given here, we can see that there is this farmer on a tractor who is plowing his land. He has a nice house. There is some form of a vehicle or a truck like parked there, and you can see how the environment looks like. Right. So we need to use the infographic to be able to interpret it and answer the question. We go to number 131. Define land redistribution. Redistribution. We are saying to distribute is to make available to the user. Redistribution. Wow. We are now saying, when we're talking of land redistribution, is reallocation. Because the concept redistribution is now referring to it being done for the second time. So it's reallocation. Reallocation of land from one group to another. And why do we do such? We are reallocating land from one group to another. Why are we doing that? We are doing this to address historical injustices. To address historical injustices. That is the main purpose. Right. We are saying there are some groups of people who were marginalized or who were disadvantaged in the previous era. They did not have access to land. So what should we do? And there were some other groups of people that have more than plenty land for them. So we need to take from those ones who had more than sufficient land for them and give to those ones who do not have. We are reallocating. That is land redistribution. We want to achieve equity in the society. We want to achieve equity in South Africa. How can we achieve equity in terms of land ownership? Let's try to reallocate land fairly. If it means one man, one farm, then that is equity. Unlike we have one man, 7 farms, and another man does not even have one farm. So we need to take from those ones with 7 farms and reallocate it to those who do not have, so that we have equitable distribution of land. So that is land redistribution. And you should not confuse redistribution with restitution, because that is a different concept or a different concept. When we talk of land restitution, it's different from redistribution. Restitution, we are saying there were people whose land was taken, or there were people who were forcibly removed from their land. We need to reimburse them. We need to give them back their land that they previously owned. But with redistribution, we are not saying these were the original owners of the land. They were marginalized. They did not have access to land, or they did not have equitable allocation of land. So we need to readdress that. But with restitution, we are saying, mainly because of the forced removals, people originally had the land, but they were dispossessed of their land because of maybe the legacy of apartheid, because of the apartheid practices. So we need to reimburse them of their land that they lost because of the practice which was common during that time when they lost their land. So that is land restitution compared to land redistribution. Right, let's go to the next question. Right, this question is saying, quote from the message above, why land reform is necessary in post-apartheid South Africa. If we are to quote in the after-apartheid era, why should we address the issue of land? Why should we address the aspect of land from the text? So we just have to take it from the text. It's a copy and paste as it is from the text here. So if we come here, you can see that our response you can get it here, starting from to help address inherited historical injustices. If we can continue, it says, especially those resulting from land dispossession of the Black majority. That is the core purpose of land reform in South Africa after apartheid practice. Post-apartheid meaning after apartheid. Why should we do land reform after apartheid? We need to help address inherited historical injustices. People were unjustly treated. Black people mainly, they were dispossessed of their land. So we need to reimburse them of their lost land, or we need to redistribute it to those who did not even access the land ownership, so that we have equity in the country. So that is where we get our quote from. We just copy and paste it as it is. Right, to go to the next question. State an advantage of land reform evident in the image. What can we see there in the image which shows that land reform is beneficial? Right, if we can check on our info, on our image here, if we try to look around, you can see that land reform enhances agricultural productivity. This farmer here is most likely to be more productive compared to a farmer who has a small holding of land, who has not been allocated sufficient land, because this farmer is showing that he has got sufficient land to do farming, and also he has got right equipment to use for the farming activities. He has a tractor there, and also you can see that there's a truck which is parked there, which shows that farming is very viable. So it's an advantage that the farmer has enhanced the productivity, as evidenced in the infographic, in the picture there. And also we can also see that it improves the living standard of the farmer. Given that the farmer is owning that nice house, the farmer is owning a tractor, the farmer is owning that car there, it means the living standard of the people of that farmer is improved. He has a better living standard because of his access to land and his access to farming activities. Or we can also talk of encouraging environmentally friendly use of land. If you can check here, there's evidence of environmental friendly farming activities. We see that there are some form of trees which are grown by the farm side, and also evident here we have some lots of vegetation in the background, which shows that this farmer is practicing environmental friendly farming methods, which are beneficial for the farmer and the environment at large. So basically, we can have a picture of what land reform brings to the people by merely looking at what is on the picture there. Right. And we can move on to the next question, which is question number 1.3.4. Right. Suggest challenges experienced in the implementation of land reform in South Africa. Right. There are typical challenges which are being faced, which are hindering the success of land reform in South Africa. I will just highlight and try to explain some of the factors. This is for number 1.3.4. We can talk of limited funding. Right, how is limited funding a problem? Right, land acquisition, the government needs to acquire the land from the previous owners and redistribute it or restitute it to the other intending owners or beneficiaries. That is hindered by lack of funding. The funding is limited. The government does not have enough funds to acquire land and to distribute it, redistribute it to the intended beneficiaries. So it's a limiting factor. It's actually hindering the progress of land reform in the country, or the implementation of land reform in the country is being limited by such lack of funding. Then we also have resistance from the landowners. Right. Some of the landowners are unwilling to dispose their land to the government so that the government is able to redistribute the land. Remember, we are adopting the willing buyer and the willing seller. The sellers are not willing to sell. The government is willing to buy the land, but the sellers are not willing to sell the land. They are resisting. That is a hindering factor towards the implementation of the land reform program, because without the contribution by the landowners, it also limits the government's capacity to redistribute the land or to exercise land reform policies. Right, and we can also talk of corruption, or we can talk of mismanagement. Right, this is typical of the politics of governments of Africa. There's rampant corruption, and corruption has been civilized into becoming a norm in much of the politics of the African governments. The authorities, they take resources for their own benefit. Resources meant to benefit maybe the beneficiaries of land reform so that they can kickstart and do business. They are channeled towards personal use. Or the allocation of land is done unfairly. You tend to find that people allocate land to each other on a nepotism basis or on a favoritism basis. So that becomes a very typical challenge that the land reform is facing, of corruption and also mismanagement of resources which are meant to benefit the land reform process. And we can also talk of the slow pace of the reform, the slow pace. of reform. The reform program is having a very slow pace. If you can check from the onset of the land reform program after independence until now, you can see that the government is still struggling to reallocate the land to the intended beneficiaries. And the process is happening at a very slow pace, which is to the detriment of the intended beneficiaries. Some will end up even dying without acquiring the land. And also, if you check, we also have lack of post-settlement support. Lack of post-settlement support. For land reform to be effective, the settled person needs to be supported. They need sufficient support. Because remember, some of these people won't be having any capital to kickstart farming. They need to be supported. You can acquire, maybe the government is allocated for you, maybe 20 hectares of land. You don't even have any simple machinery to use for farming. You don't have inputs. You don't have the knowledge. So it needs to be complemented with post-settlement support. The farmer needs to be supported holistically so that they are productive enough to kickstart farming and to benefit from the land. Because without such, they might own the land and still not improve their living standards because they cannot utilize the land profitably for reasons peculiar to them. They might not have the right knowledge, they might not have the right funding, they might not have sufficient capital to start the business, or to utilize the land in the intended purpose or in the intended direction. So that is also a hindering factor towards the land reform in South Africa. Right, we move on. We are not limiting this to this, but limiting the responses to this. We have other different responses. We cannot exhaust all the responses unless we are to write a textbook. Right, we move on to the next question. The next question, we are moving on to number 135, which is a 3x2 question. Explain the positive impact of land reform on rural communities in South Africa. The question is saying positive impacts. Impacts can either be negative or positive, meaning to say negative impacts are looking at the unpleasant side of land reform or the harmful side of land reform. Then on who? On rural communities. We are worried about the rural communities. How are they impacted positively by land reform? Right. I'm just going to summarize some of the impacts here quickly. The impacts of rural communities of land reform in South Africa. Right. We have issues like increased access to land. Is one impact. The rural communities now have got increased access to land. Their land holdings now are enhanced. If they were owning small pieces of land for subsistence farming, now they have relatively larger pieces of land where they can do more production. So it's a positive impact because now they have increased access and they were previously disadvantaged. Now they are advantaged because they now have more access to land. And also, we can talk of improved livelihoods. The way of life is enhanced. People are now able to produce enough food for their families, produce enough food, even extra food for sale. And also they are now able to grow a variety of crops to enhance their nutrition. So the livelihoods in the end is going to be improved. They're going to get an income from the sale of some of the produce. They are going to better their lives. They're going to acquire decent education, be able to send their kids to decent schools, and be able to improve their whole living standards. So livelihoods are improved in the rural communities. And you can also talk of poverty reduction. People who own land and use it productively, they're able to generate income from the land, and they're able to do away with poverty. And also in the rural communities, people are also going to get jobs because those who own land are not only going to work or provide labor for themselves, they also need to hire labor and provide jobs. At the end, poverty will be eradicated in the rural communities. Then you can also talk of aspects like empowerment of the rural communities. The rural communities are empowered. They are now able to control their land and resources, and they are also going to determine their destiny. They are empowered because of land ownership. Land ownership is a form of empowerment which can be given to an individual. If you own land, you are empowered. You can only claim that you are a citizen in a country once you own land, because land is a resource which is basic and which is vital for the success of every individual in the country. So it's an empowerment measure, which will mean that people will be able now to control their own land and their resources and be also be able to determine their destiny. Then we can also talk of aspects like social cohesion and unit. Social cohesion and unit. With land reform, it's going to enhance cohesion. The communities are going to cooperate. They're going to come together and work together. They're going to collectively own their land and control their land ownership and work together as a community. So it brings about a sense of unity to the community and cohesion so that they're able to work together for the benefit of the whole community. And also, we can lastly talk of environmental sustainability. Right. With land reform, it comes with the package of sustainable land use practice. Farmers are now equipped with the resources with the knowledge how to sustain their lands, how to effectively manage their land and not harm their land. So at the end, we have conservation happening, and also we have sustainable land use practices are being implemented. And that is beneficial to the whole rural community. Instead of them harming the environment, causing soil erosion, causing land degradation, causing deforestation, now with land reform, they are made aware on sustainable practices of land use and ultimately conservation of the resources in the rural communities. And apparently that is going to lead to sustainable development of the rural areas. Right. We go on to number 1.4. Number 1.4 is talking about a particular diagram below on land use zones. This is a Parkerville city, a typical city, and you can see this point A, which is the focal point of the city. We have low-income housing, light industries, high-income shopping mall, power station, heavy industry. Right, that is the basic interpretation of that model city, which is called Parkerville. Right, to go to our question, identify the land use zone indicated by A. If you check A here, A, it happens to be the core focal point of this whole urban city. So A qualifies to be the central business district. This is our CBD at the center of the settlement. Right. Provide evidence from the sketch to support your answer. Right. What evidence can we use that this is the CBD here? The evidence that is that is visible from there is we know that the CBD is the most accessible part of the urban settlement. It's the one which is interlinked with the transport modes. So if we check here, there's a railway line which is connecting there. There's a road which is also connecting there. Another road coming from this direction connecting. Another road again connecting. Another road connecting. Another railway line connecting. So we are seeing that this is the most accessible part of the urban settlement. So basically, it's because of its accessibility. The road networks are linking, and also another road network here through the low-income housing going there. So it's the most accessible part of the urban settlement. Right, we move on to the next question. Right, the next question is talking about identify a commercial activity in Parkerville City that has been decentralized. Right, I think we understand when we talk of centralization and decentralization. Centralization, that is the concentration of activities into one geographical location. We are having so many activities happening in the same geographical space. That is centralization. But when we're talking of decentralization, the question here is talking about decentralization, which means we are spreading out activities to other areas. Instead of us putting all the activities in one geographical space, we are spreading them out to other geographical spaces. So we are saying which activity has been decentralized. We know there is centralization in the CBD. That is where we find all the commercial activities happening. We have banking activities, we have insurance, we have retail shops, we have car dealers, we have all sorts of activities, they are situated in the central business district because that is the core focal point of the urban settlement. But we're not talking of decentralization. We're saying we are now moving those activities from the core center of the urban settlement into other surrounding areas or into other outlying areas. And if we check here, the activity which has been removed from the CBD, which is compatible with the CBD, which we can find outside, we can see that we have a shopping mall here. This shopping mall. So this shopping mall is our commercial activity, which has been decentralized. The shopping malls, we typically find the shopping malls in the CBD. But now if the shopping mall is in the outskirts, like where it is located there, it has been decentralized. It has been moved from the focal point and placed somewhere outside the focal point. Right. Explain why the activity mentioned in question 143 has been decentralized. Why do we have malls being developed away from the CBD? Why are they being moved now? Why are we having a tendency of now not concentrating the shopping malls in the CBD? We're now getting them into the outlying business districts. Why is it like that? Right. The reasons here, we just highlight some of the reasons in a very short space of time. Right. We can talk of space constraints. Limitation of space. In the CBD, we know that the space is fully occupied and we rarely find new space to expand. The only way to expand in the central business district is to expand vertically, which means we can only have expansion happening with the creation of skyscrapers or those high-rise buildings, which is not very compatible with shopping malls. We cannot ultimately have a very high-rise building for a shopping mall. So it's space constraints. We can only find available space for expansion and creation of the shopping malls outside the central business district. That is why it has been moved out of the CBD. Or we can talk of aspects like traffic congestion. In the CBD, there is so much congestion. The concentration of vehicles in the CBD is so much such that there is difficulty in movement from one place to the other, which inconvenience the shoppers. So we tend to move away from areas that are heavily congested and locate away from the central business district where there's convenience. And you can also talk of aspects like parking and accessibility. Theoretically, we say the CBD is the most accessible based on its interlinking transport routes. But now, because of traffic congestion, it's no longer very accessible. It's very difficult to get to the CBD because of the volumes of traffic. There are a number of transport links connecting to the CBD, but there is no more easy access because of the aspect of traffic congestion. There is now high volume of traffic applying the central business district, such that we have difficulty in accessing the central business district. So also the parking and space is limited in the central business district. Convenience of customers who want to do business in the shopping malls, they need a space for parking where they can safely park and do their business. So that space is not readily available and it's not convenient for people to do shopping in the central business district because of such reasons. And also you can talk of lower costs. Costs are relatively lower in the outskirts compared to the CBD. The shopping malls can get cheaper land to build on in the outskirts of the city, unlike concentrating in the CBD where land values are very high. Or we can also talk of targeted demographics. Targeted demographics. The youth of today, they portray the CBD as a thing of the past. They are no longer interested in doing business in the central business district, but they prefer the suburban. Those people from affluent areas are the people who are from middle to high income. They no longer prefer to do business in the CBD. They portray the CBD as a thing of the past or as a thing of the old era. They are no more interested much in the central business district, but rather they prefer doing business in the outlying business districts. So to target such people, we need to establish such malls out of the CBD so that they can easily access and portray such areas as new developments. and as modern world developments, unlike them forcing themselves into the modern era of concentrating in the CBD. And also we can talk of reduced competition. In the CBD, there's so much competition, which will render viability of businesses limited. And in the outlying business, there's less competition, which means businesses are more viable when they are located in the shopping malls outside the central business district, because there's less competition. Or you can talk of safety and security. Safety and security. It's more safe and secure to do business outside the central business district. The levels of crime are relatively lower compared to the CBD due to concentration of activities in the CBD. We also tend to find that criminal activities are very high. And you can also talk of such factors like the level of pollution in the form of noise and in the form of air pollution. Such activities are decentralized for those reasons. We have the centripetal and the centrifugal factors, the pushing factors out of the CBD and the pulling factors to the outlying business districts. Right, that is basically what is expected of from that particular question. Then we can move on to the next question, which is a question number 1.4.5. Right. The land use model depicted in the sketch above closely resembles the, is it a multiple nuclei or a third world city? Right. What we call a multiple nuclei, we are saying there are several focal points that are going to develop in the urban settlement and that are going to act as mini CBDs for that particular area. But if you check here, we do not have any a number of focal points here. We just have the main CBD and maybe just this mall which is just developed there. There are no other focal points to qualify this to become a multiple nuclei. So this is typical of a third world city. Right. Then we'll go on to the next one. Give a reason for your answer in 145. Why are we saying this qualifies to be a third world city? Right, a third world city, we are looking at a city from the developing countries, which have got, like, for example, a South African city, which has got a resemblance of the era of apartheid. It still has the legacy of apartheid, where we have the low-income housing being located closer to the CBD or to the industrial area, which is non-compatible because of the legacy of apartheid. And the middle and the high-income areas, they are located away from the central business districts where there's cleaner environment. So if you can check here, we also tend to find that it's typical of, it's applicable to developing countries. The low-income housing here, if you can check, the low-income housing is located in between the heavy industry and also the light industry here, which resembles that the low income have no choice. They have to stay close to their workplace in the CBD or in the light industries or in the heavy industries. While it's the middle and the high incomes, they locate away from the central business district and for the need for a safer environment and a cleaner environment. And if you also check, there's one main focal point here. We do not have many focal points. Why we are saying this is a third world city? A third world city is not, much of them, they're not multiple nuclei. They have got one common nuclei. So here the CBD, that's the focal point of this whole urban settlement. So it can also qualify because of it having one main focal point, which is the CBD. Or also, we can look at the shape. It has a regular shape. The shape here is more or less a regular shape, which resembles also that it's a developing country as city. If it was a multiple nuclei, it won't have a regular shape. It will have a focal point, then it will have activities happening around it. There's another focal point, activities happening there, another focal point, activities happening. So the shape becomes irregular at the end because of the existence of a number of focal points. But this one, because it has one main focal point, it portrays more of a regular shape. Right. Let's move on to the next question, number 147. Discuss two factors evident in the diagram that influence the location of a high-income residential area. The high-income residential area, if we can figure out, is located here. Why is it here? That is the question. what factors have promoted, or what factors have influenced the location of the high income residential area in this particular zone here, right? So if we can check the high income residential areas in this area here, this is a less congested area. There's more open space. Remember, the holdings, land holdings of high income residential areas, they are big. They need relatively larger spaces. So here, because there's available open space, that is why they are locating on this part here, further away from the CBD. And also, we can qualify it to be having a cleaner environment. Why is it clean? It's far away from the heavy industries which are there. The power station is very far away. The light industries are also there. This area is far away from polluting activities. So the environment is cleaner. That is why it's located there, because of the cleaner environment or a healthier environment. The environment is healthier. And also you can talk of transport links. There's this major road here, which is passing by, connecting to the CBD. So this is also a feature which has assisted the development of this high income residential area because of its accessibility by the usage of that road. So a transport link is also a qualifying factor. And you can also talk of the amenities, the high-end amenities. Or we can talk of amenities and services, which is this particular mall here. The mall is just adjacent there, which means these high income, remember, they are not much interested in doing business in the CBD, but in the outlying business district. So the mall here is also a facilitating a factor facilitating the development of the high income area in this particular zone here, because of it being close to the shopping mall. And you can also talk of community and social amenities. This golf course here, it's a community amenity which is beneficial for the high income residential area. They can effectively make use of the golf course here as the amenity. So basically, those are some of the reasons that we can use to justify the existence of the high income residential area in that particular section of the urban settlement. Right. That was number 1.47. Let's move on to the next question, which is our question number 1.5, which talks about basic water service in South Africa in a decade after years of progress. Right. We are not going to read the infographic. Hoping that you have read the infographic. We just want to go to the questions and figure out how best we can answer those questions. Why is the supply of water in urban areas seen as an injustice? When we're talking of injustices here, we are saying we are not doing fairness. We are not doing justice to a particular group of people. These people are not having an equal share of the resources that they should be benefiting from as part of the South African society. We are doing an injustice to them. So we are saying the supply of water is an injustice. Why is the supply of water in urban areas seen as an injustice? Right. The reason that is given here, it says, the reliability of water and services and infrastructure, as shown by frequent water supply interruptions, has been on a downward trend. So why is it an injustice? It qualifies to be an injustice because the reliability of water and infrastructure has been on a downward trend. The downward trend of reliability of water. Water is a basic service that everyone should acquire, should get at any particular point. So if it's unreliable or if there's a downward trend, it's worsening. The availability of water is worsening, which means day after day, the availability of water is getting worse and worse. Which means these urban settlers, they are being exposed to some form of injustice. They should be having adequate and sufficient and reliable supply of water, but they are not having it. And the trend is on a downward, which means they are not having sufficient access to water according to their needs, and the water is not reliable. And also, it has led to the frequent water supply interruptions. This is an injustice. If there are people who are exposed to water supply interruptions and also it's not reliable, that is an injustice. So the reliability of water, which is going on a downward trend, and also this frequent water supply interruption. People should not have interrupted water supply. They should access water whenever they want to use it and not be limited to the amount of water that they can access at any particular point in time. So it qualifies to be an injustice because they are not having reliable access to water, and also they are exposed to interruptions of water supply. That is an injustice. Right, number 152. Identify a reason from the passage for the deterioration of the country's water infrastructure and the actual delivery of reliable and safe water. What is happening here? We want to find a reason for the deterioration of the country's water infrastructure. Right, if we go here, we find that the text is saying, if we come here, it says underinvestment in infrastructure maintenance and delays in the renewal of old infrastructure. This is the reason why there is deterioration of the country's water infrastructure. There is underinvestment in infrastructure. The government is not doing investment in infrastructure of water supply. Maintenance is not being maintained. And also delays in the renewal of old infrastructure. We have to renew old infrastructure so that we have reliable water supply. But the government is not taking maintenance of the infrastructure and is also delaying to replace old infrastructure. That is the reason why we are having a deterioration in the water supply infrastructure and the actual delivery of our water according to our given text. Move on to the next question. Explain how urbanization contributes to the poor water supply in urban areas. Our concern here, we need to apply the concept of urbanization and link it to its contribution to poor water supply. We have defined the urbanization. We're saying it's the increasing numbers of people staying in cities and towns. How is it contributing towards poor water supply? So address the concept of urbanization to show that you know what urbanization is and how it is impacting on poor water supply. How is it contributing towards poor water supply? So you can respond by saying that increasing numbers of urban population creates pressure on available water resources. There is pressure on water resources. If you're having too many people, the water supply facility maybe was meant to supply a given number of people. And now we are exceeding that number, or we are even doubling the number. That is going to add pressure on water infrastructure. Which will lead to, which will compromise to poor water supply. Or we can also talk of the water supply will become less than the size of the population. If the water supply is less than the population, it means that is contributing towards poor water supply. Or we can also talk of urbanization contributing to illegal water connection. The increasing numbers of people in cities and towns, mainly in the informal settlements, some people will end up illegally connecting themselves to the water supply, and that will compromise the supply of water in the cities and the towns because of the rapid increase in the numbers of people in the cities and the towns. Right. We move on to the next question. Describe the social impact of poor water supply in urban areas. Social impacts. How does poor water supply impact on the societies? By societies, we are looking at people staying together. How are they impacted? Or the quality of life of people, how is it impacted by poor water supply? There are so many impacts here. When we talk of health risks, we are talking of diseases like waterborne diseases. They get on the rise if we are not having sufficient water supply. If there's poor water supply, it means it poses these health risks coming from waterborne diseases, or it can also contribute towards poor hygiene and sanitation. People will end up staying in dirty conditions because of limited access to water. We need water on a daily basis to maintain our hygiene and to maintain the sanitary environment. So if there's no water, it means it is also contributing to unhygienic conditions and poor sanitation. And also, it can contribute to food insecurity in the urban areas. What is going to happen to food insecurity? We are looking at water is needed for food preparation. The activities involving food preparation, they need to use water. In the industries where they do food preparation or where they do food processing, they need to use water. So if there's no water, it means those activities cannot effectively happen. The processing of food resources cannot effectively happen, and that will lead to food insecurity for the people. And also, you can talk of community tension. The community can end up developing some form of tensions because of fighting over scarce water resources. If water is scarce and it has to be controlled or has to be centralized in its control, that will lead to a tension amongst the community members. And also, you can talk of educational impacts. It can also impact negatively on education as a social aspect. If there is no water in the schools, school out has to be earlier because we cannot stay in unhygienic conditions in a school where there's no water. That is going to impact on the education of the learners. Imagine it's examination time, there is no water in the school the whole day, and you're supposed to write an examination. That will lead to a very difficult situation. So it impacts negatively on the education, or also give a check on the attendance of learners. If there's no water from the communities where you're coming from, you rarely come to school because you need water to do your daily activities before you go to school, to get food before you go to school. You need to cook, you need to bath, you need to wash. And if without that, it means that will impact negatively on the educational aspect of the learners who are supposed to be attending school. So it's also a negative implication, right? We can also check on, those are some of the responses which are relevant to the question. We check on the next question, which is number 1.55, which is a paragraph question, which talks about suggests how local municipalities can avoid a major water crisis and improve water security. What can be done to improve water security through the local municipalities? We are looking at the local governments of different municipalities. How can they take charge to avoid situation of major water crisis and improve our water security? Right, I will just highlight some of the possible responses here and just briefly explain on them. Right, here we can talk of water conservation. We can conserve the available water resources so that we cannot overexploit them and they last relatively longer for the benefit of the entirety of the time when we want to use the resources. Conservation, and also we can look at efficiency measures. There are measures that need to be implemented that ensures efficient use of water resources. For example, maintaining leaking taps. It's a waste of water resources if taps are leaking or if the pipes are leaking. They need to be maintained so that we do not have leakages. Right. We can also talk of diversification of water sources. We can try to acquire water from different sources. As a municipality can try to make initiatives to get water from multiple sources. For example, they can get water from surface water storage. For example, from the rivers, they can try to acquire water from such or from underground. We extract water from underground water storage. Or we can also try to use recycled water so that we improve the quality, the supply of water by getting it from different sources. Then we can also talk of water infrastructure maintenance. Water infrastructure should be regularly maintained and repaired and also replaced so that we do not have inefficient water infrastructure that leaks and that wastes water as a precious resource. Or we can talk of water storage. This comes now as a backup or an emergency. In case we have a water crisis which has come unprepared, we need to have a backup plan. So we should have maybe water storage facilities like reservoirs, which are on standby. In case there is a crisis, we feed the population with that water from the reservoirs. So we need water storage as a backup plan. Or we also need to look at river and catchment management. We need to implement strategies to ensure that the rivers and the catchment areas are well managed to avoid polluting the river resources so that we have quality water which can sustain the urban settlements. Right. We also need to talk of public education and awareness. Educate people on the need to conserve water, on the need to conserve water resources in the catchment areas so that we have clean water and uninterrupted supply of water from the natural resources. So by educating people and making them aware, we hold awareness campaigns on the population to make them know that there are the dangers involved in harming the environment, and in relation to availability of water resources, it is also detrimental. Right, you can also talk of other things like law enforcement. Is also a very valid aspect. Law enforcement, enactment of laws and enforcing them. We should put laws and enforce them as a municipality to ensure that water resources are conserved and also avoid reckless or uneconomic usage of water resources. So basically, it's a paragraph question. You should at least be able to figure out 4 responses and be able to explain them in full and in a paragraph format. You must not use the bullet presentation for a paragraph question. You must write continuously in a paragraph, and your points should be fully developed with a factor which is complemented with a qualifier that will constitute you to get 8 marks for a paragraph question. And we've come to the end of our first question, which is a question on settlement geography, which is question number 1. Right, we quickly move on to question number 2, which is on economic geography of South Africa. Right, on economic geography, we have the first question, which is on the particular types of industries. Like as we can see here, we have crude oil extraction, then the storage of oil, frozen foods at D, skilled labor force, which is there, then microchip industry, which is at B, then we have forestry located there, and we have the paper mill, which is located here. We have at C, the internet provider, then we have these industries here, like Secunda, which deals with the refinery of oil, and also the Kundona mill, and we have the milk factory here, and we have a power station here. Those are our particular industries that we're going to use in the discussion. All right, let's go to the first question, number 2.11. This industry links processes such as refining and producing parts that are essential to the final product. We're talking of refining here. Refining and producing parts that are essential to the final product. Right. So the correct response here is our G for the first question. Our G, which is storage of oil. Right. We move on to the next question. It is number 1212. This type of industry provides communication services, including mobile and internet connectivity. I think the question is clear. Internet connectivity, we find it at C there, where we have this communication tower, which deals with internet provision and communication services, which is our response for that question, which is C. And we move on to the next question. This industry based its location on the access to highly skilled workers. Right, you can see here is the microchip industry. The microchip industry relies on the skilled labor force there. This is a high technology industry that requires people who are very much skilled. It does not require any person from the street. Right, so it's that microchip industry, which is our B, And then we will move on to the next question. Next question is, this industry is located close to the customers as their products are perishable. Their products are perishable. When we're talking of perishable products, we are looking at those products that easily go bad or that go bad in a short period of time. So if you can look at a milk factory, milk is a perishable product. It also needs to locate close to the customer. And also, if you look at frozen foods, they are also some form of perishable. So those two responses are relevant. They act as market-oriented industries. They locate close to their market for the need to sell their products while they are still fresh. So we go number 215. Industries that are located close to the natural resource required for manufacturing. These industries, they locate close to the natural resource that they use in their production process. Right, if we check power stations, look at it from the South African perspective, we have much of our coal-fired power stations in Mpumalanga because that is where we have our coal reserves as a natural resource. We extract coal then because coal is a bulk resource. We cannot transport it for distances to go and generate power. Rather, we locate the industry close to the raw material. So power station, and also if we look at a paper mill here, a paper mill is located close to the forestry here because the resource comes from the forest. We have timber coming from here being processed here into paper. So it's also another activity. So these two qualify, the power station and the paper mill, they qualify. Then we go to the next one. This industry can have environmental implications due to resource extraction, waste generation and emission and pollution. Right, resource extraction and waste generation and emission or pollution. The most relevant response is the power station, which is F. The power station, when coal is being extracted, it leads to damage of the environment, which is environmental degradation, and the generation of the waste. The waste resources from power stations, it needs to be disposed correctly because it will also cause environmental harm by polluting the rivers and polluting the land. And also emissions. During the generation process, you can see that there is smoke which is being emitted here, which is also a danger to the environment. Right. And we go to the last question. This industry manufactures products for everyday use. Everyday use, we are looking at those convenient products that we need on a daily basis. So we can also refer back to the milk factory. We need milk products almost on a daily basis. Also frozen foods, we also need them on a daily basis. So basically, those are the responses to the questions on question number 2.1. Right, we go to the next question, which is question number 2.2. It deals with coal mining in South Africa. It talks about the contribution by commodity. It talks about coal mining. It talks about electricity production. It's an infographic which is composite. We cannot look at that. We go to the questions. Right, number 2.21, most South African coal reserves are found in, according to the infographic here, it says coal mining occurs predominantly in Mpumalanga and Limpopo. Right. And it says approximately 48% of these reserves are based in Mpumalanga and 50% are based in Limpopo, which means these are our two core provinces responsible for coal reserves provision. So if we check here, we have Mpumalanga and Limpopo. In our responses, we have irrelevant responses like the Western Cape and the Eastern Cape. Gauteng, though, is relevant, but it has very few reserves. So Limpopo qualifies to be the correct response for 2.21. Right, so it's C for that one. Move on to the next question. Coal mining contributes to dash poverty and leads to the dash of the natural environment. Our correct response is reduced poverty because it creates jobs. And to the environment, there is degradation, the environment. So it's item number 1 and item number 3, which we find on response B. Right, move on to the next question. Sorry. Response item number 1 and item number 3. Yes, reduced poverty and reduced, this is response number A, not B. Item number 1 and item number 3, they are on response number A, which is reduced poverty and it leads to degradation of the natural environment, which is A. We'll move on to the next question, number 2.23. Coal mining is classified under which sector of the economy? I think you understand the sectors of the economy. This is primary sector. Mining activities, farming, forestry, fisheries, they fall under primary. They are extraction of natural resources, including agriculture. Secondary activities, we deal with processing of the raw material, which comes as a processing and manufacturing. Then we go on to tertiary, that is service provision. We look at education, healthcare. We look at insurance. We look at warehousing. We look at retailing. All those services, they fall under the tertiary sector. Then quaternary sector, we are looking at high level skilled activities. For example, biotechnology and research, they fall under the quaternary activities. Right. Then we move on to number 2.24. Coal contributes dash percentage towards the GDP of South Africa. We got the infographic. What percentage does coal contribute? Contribution by commodity. Coal is here. Our coal is contributing this much. This is between 20 and 30%. So which means it's in between, it's around 25%. So without wasting time, we've read our infographic. We got the responses. Our correct response is 25 based on what we have seen on the infographic. We move on. Fluctuations in coal prices impact South Africa's economy in the following manner. How does it impact? It impacts in this manner here. Higher prices lead to an increased GDP. Lower prices reduce the GDP. If prices of coal are high, it means the value of coal has gained or has appreciated, which means it's going to contribute more towards the value of the goods produced in the country. But if the prices are low, it means we are going to get less contribution towards the GDP of South Africa. 226. A factor favoring the mining of coal in South Africa is what? Factors favoring the coal mining. Elimination, rock layers have higher temperatures. Increasing temperature gradient is not a favoring factor. Coal reserves are near the surface. This is very correct. Fluctuation in prices, this is not good. If prices are low, that is going to contribute towards a low activity in the mining sector. Nationalization of mines, that is also not good because the government is inefficient. So coal reserves are near the surface. That's correct. 227. Coal in South Africa is predominantly used for the production of, I think if we come here, we can see our answer. Coal is mainly used as fuel to generate electricity. Straight, the answer is here. Without wasting time, we go to the responses. Our answer, we have it, electricity. So the correct response here is electricity. 228, positive economic impact of coal mines include, we're looking at the positive impact of coal mines. They stimulate economic growth in surrounding areas. That is correct. Overutilization of existing infrastructure, that is a negative implication. Strikes for higher wages is negative. Encourages illegal mining, that is negative. So the correct response is here is A, stimulate growth in surrounding areas. So these are the correct responses from question number 2.2 based on what we have discussed there and what we have seen from the given infographic. We move on to the next question, which is a question on beef production in South Africa. It talks about current beef in South Africa. Our cattle feedlots are located at Heidelberg, Nigel, and Albert Falls cattle farms. The Heidelberg farms is the largest feedlot in the world at 2,330 hectares. Then beef exports are shown there to China, Dubai, Kuwait, Jordan, Hong Kong, Egypt. Then we have Heidelberg and Nigel located in this province and Albert Falls located in that province. Right, let's quickly go to our questions. Right. Name 2 provinces in which beef is located. We are told about these farms here, and they are shown here. So what we want here is to figure out which province is this, which is indicated here, where we have those 2 farms, the Heidelberg and Nigel farms, and also have the Albert Falls, which province is this. So basically, knowing your map of South Africa, you know that this is Gauteng, here, located where we have Heidelberg and Nigel. These are Gauteng and Albert Falls. If you know well your South Africa, this is Limpopo. And if you check here, this is Mpumalanga. And if you check here, this is KZN. And if you check here, as you go, that is Free State, that is the Eastern Cape and the Western Cape. Then this is Northwest, and this is the Northern Cape. So based on that, you should be able to figure out your provinces in the country. So this is KZN. That is, those are the two responses to those two questions. Right, move on to the next question. Identify one climatological factor that favors beef farming in the provinces identified. What climatological factors? We are looking at the climate of Gauteng and the climate of KZN. Right, I will just highlight the climatological factors here. Then we'll just have a brief description of the climatic condition. You can talk of the temperatures. The Gauteng temperatures, they are typical of the temperate climate temperatures, which are mild in winter and warm in summer. Such temperatures are good for cattle breeding. They are suitable for beef cattle. Mild winters and warm summers, the temperate climatic temperatures, they are good for beef farming. And also can talk of adequate rainfall. The rainfall in Gauteng is adequate for beef farming, and also we have high rainfall in KZN that will facilitate the growth of pastures. We need rainfall for the pastures mainly. So the pastures will do well, and the cattle will have sufficient pastures for grazing because of the adequate rainfall received in those two provinces. Then you can also talk of low humidity. Right? What about the low humidity? It reduces heat stress. With high humidity, the cattle will suffer from heat stress. So with low humidity, it is favorable for beef cattle production because they will be having moderate humidity conditions, which are favorable for their nourishment. Then we also have a long growing season. How does a long growing season facilitate beef production? The season here allows for multiple grazing cycles. If you are doing paddocking and the season is long, we can shift and shift again the cattle into different pasture lands because we have a long growing season whereby the pastures are thriving because of the favorable climatic condition. And also, we can talk of what? We've talked of rainfall, we've talked of temperatures, we've talked of, I think those are the basic factors that favor the production of beef in the two provinces mentioned. Right, we'll move on to the next question. The next question is on, according to the graph, how many kilograms of beef does Karan beef export to China? Our exportation to China, according to the infographic, we just have to visit the infographic and see how much is exported to China. It's clear, we can see it from there. If you check on our export destinations, we have China as the first one. You can see here that in China, the export reading is at 4 million. Then Dubai, Kuwait, going until get to Egypt. So here, our export to China is constituting at 4 million kilograms in a year. So the correct response here is 4 million kgs according to what we have seen on the infographic. So we can write it as 4 million kilograms, or in digits 40000 kgs in a year. Right. That is the export to China. Explain how drought conditions will negatively impact beef exports. If you are having less than average rainfall, how is that going to impact on the exports of beef? Right, I'm going to explain how is that going to impact on the export of beef if you're having below average rainfall. Right, I'm going to put the responses there. Right, we can talk of here decreased cattle population. The cattle head is going to reduce, and that is going to contribute towards lower exports. Because of drought conditions, we cannot keep as many cattle in a drought situation. We keep less of them. And some are also going to die because of lack of pastures and lack of water. So that is going to contribute towards a lower export because of a decrease in the head of cattle. And also, you can look at lower weight, lower carcass weight. And that will reduce export volumes. Cattle which are exposed to poor nutrition because of drought, which do not access sufficient water and do not access sufficient pastures, they do not have weight. They do not weigh enough to give us the required volumes. So at the end, because of the reduced weight of the carcass of the beef, we're going to have reduced export volumes. It's going to impact negatively on the volumes of exports because of the reduced weight coming from drought situation. And also, we can talk of poor meat quality. Cattle which are undernourished, they have got poor meat quality. And that is going to affect, again, our exports are going to be less desirable. We're not going to be competitive enough. Our exports are going to be less desirable on the international market because of poor quality. The international market will opt to buy from suppliers of better quality, unlike buying from the poor quality suppliers because of drought situation. And also, we can look at increased disease prevalence. Prevalence of disease is going to increase. The cattle which are exposed to drought, they are prone to diseases, and a lot of some of the diseases, they thrive under dry conditions. So what is going to happen is that is going to affect negatively on the exports to the extent that exports might be restricted. The international market does not accept diseased meat. At the end, we end up being restricted from the exportation market. So because our cattle are weak, they are prone to diseases, and the quality of meat is also poor and also lower carcass weight, and the cattle head is going to decline. That is going to impact negatively on the exports of our beef products to other countries. Those are some of the responses which are relevant to that particular question. We move on to the next question. Discuss the social and economic impact of beef production in South Africa. Right, this question here, when the question is saying impacts, it's not one-sided, it can be two-sided, the positive and the negative. And in particular, this question here, it wants us to address the social and the economic, which means we should at least balance the discussion by giving the social and the economic, not only focusing on one side. Right, so I'll just highlight quickly. On social, we can talk of aspects like food security. We are going to have guaranteed of supply of nutritious food. And also we can talk of employment, job creation for the society. The farmers are going to employ laborers, and that is also going to contribute towards the development of other related industries. So job creation, or we can talk of rural development. The rural areas are going to develop because of farming activities. Infrastructure is going to be developed. A lot more is going to happen in the rural areas, upliftment of the rural community. So it's social. And also we can look at the cultural significance of cattle. Cattle are a significant animal in the African society. They are used for different cultural purposes. For example, the rituals, or you can look at the lobola process. It's also significant. They're also significant for such. So it contributes, or it affects socially for those aspects. Then economically, you can talk of some of the aspects like GDP contribution, like what we have seen. The exportation of beef to other countries is very viable for South Africa, which is contributing towards the growth of the economy of South Africa. Or you can talk of getting export revenue. The government, when the companies export, they get revenue from other countries when they sell to those countries. Or you can also talk of government revenue. The government has to tax those companies which are into beef production and gets revenue. So government revenue is also contributed by beef farming. So those are some of the implications on the social basis and on the economic basis based on beef farming in South Africa, right? We move on to number 2.4. Number 2.4 is a question which is based on your IDZ for the exam year 2024, November, which is the Saldanha Bay. Right. Investment agreements in Saldanha Bay Industrial Development Zone, IDZ, totals over 3 billion rand. The economy of the Saldanha Bay, IDZ, is based on the manufacturing, agricultural or fishing, tourism, and harbor industries. Land-based and some marine infrastructures are established. And collaboration with Transnet for additional port facilities is underway. The investments are seen as fostering industrial value chains and promoting local economic growth. That is the text given there and the picture given of Saldanha Bay IDZ. Right. So we move on to our questions. Define the term industrial development zone. What is in IDZ? Right. When you're defining an IDZ, you should address the basics of the definition because it's a concept. You can define it in your own words, but as long as you address the basics of the question. Right. What you should address here when you're addressing the concept of an IDZ, one, you should address that it's an industrial estate which is meant for exports. The main purpose in the IDZ is to produce products for the export market. That is the main purpose. We are targeting to produce products to sell to other countries. And how is that possible? It's linked to a port, which can either be a seaport or an airport. These are the basics of the IDZ. It's an industrial estate which is meant to produce product for the export, which is linked to a port, which can either be a seaport or an airport. That is the basics of the industrial development zone. No matter how you can define it, but make sure that you address the basics. That the industries in that particular estate, they are meant to produce products for the export market, and that is why they are linked to a port or to a seaport, which is a harbor, or an airport for exportation of such products to the international market. That is the basics for an IDZ. So our IDZ is the Saldanha Bay, which is linked to the West Coast Port, or the harbor is linked on the Atlantic Ocean to export products to the world market. So number 242, it says, with reference to the image, identify the infrastructure that is developed due to the economic activities in the Saldanha Bay. With reference to the image, which means according to what you are seeing here, what are we seeing? Based on what we can trace from the picture, we are seeing this is the shoreline here. So definitely in the Saldanha Bay, one of the infrastructure that we can talk about here, we can talk of the water port facility. Water port facility. We have infrastructure facilitating the docking of ships here so that they can load and offload cargo along the shoreline. So it's one infrastructure which is developed there. Or if you can trace, we'll also see that maybe this one is a road network. You can talk of the road network. Road infrastructure is also developed. And also, if you can check again, we can see that also there's electricity provision. There's infrastructure for electricity provision, which is evident there. So we can talk of electricity provision, and definitely water provision is also there. Then we can also talk of the railway facility, though it's not very evident, but you can try to trace and figure out. You can see that maybe this is a railway line. It's also possible. Then we can also talk of housing and amenities. This whole area here is more of a housing and a housing area for the industrial estate. So basically, those are some of the infrastructure that they've developed that you can mention for that question based on what you are seeing on the infographic, on the picture rather, right? We move on to the next question. According to the source, identify one industrial activity in the Saldanha Bay IDZ. According to the source, identify one industrial activity that is happening. I think you can clearly see that the activities are highlighted here. The economy of Saldanha Bay is based on the manufacturing, agricultural, fishing, tourism, urban industries. They are listed here, like what you can see. These are the activities that are happening in that ID set according to what you have seen being listed here: manufacturing, agricultural, fishing, tourism, or harbor industry. Right. We go on to the next one. The next one is saying, discuss factors favoring the development of the Saldanha Bay IDZ. Factors favoring the development of that industrial development zone. What are the factors that I've promoted the development of that industrial estate? Right. Without wasting time, the factors, we just list them and briefly discuss them. Right. The factors here for number 1, for number 2, 4, 4. Right. You can find that one of the factor is the location, which is on the west coast. How does it favor? There is easy access to shipping areas. We talked about an IDZ being close to a port, which is a harbor or a seaport, for easy shipping. So this one is close to the western coast or shoreline for easy shipping of products coming from the industrial estate. So it's one factor which is favoring the development because it's easily accessible to the Saldanha Bay port, which is a deep port which can accommodate the large vessels to dock there. And then you can talk of the deep port, the deep water port, thereby the coastal area, which allows even large vehicles, it allows for large vessels to dock there, to load and unload. And you can also talk of natural resources. There are plenty of natural resources to feed into the industrial activities happening there. For example, iron ore, or we can talk of gas and oil. Those are some of the resources which are beneficial for the industries in the ID set. Then you can also talk of government support. Government support through tax incentives. The government is also doing a favor to the industries by giving them tax incentives so that they increase or expand their operation. Then we also talk of access to energy. There is sufficient energy generation for the industrial activities, which comes in the form of renewable energy. So it's a favoring factor for the industries because they have guaranteed supply of energy. We cannot exhaust the points, but those are some of the points. Since it's a 2x2 point mark allocation, just highlight 2 points and give a point and qualify it. So those are the responses to that particular question. We move on to number 2.4.5. Explain how the Saldanha Bay impacts local communities. Impacts local communities, and impact can both be positive and negative. Right, so we'll look at the positive and we'll look also at the negative first. Then for the positive, we're looking at aspects like job creation. The industries will create jobs for the people in the local communities. It's a positive impact. You can talk of economic growth. The economy will grow through increased production of goods and services and through gaining of income from the sales of the products. So the economy is going to benefit. We can talk of infrastructure development. We have talked of the different forms of infrastructure earlier on that is beneficial for the local communities. And we can also talk of skills development. The companies operating in the IDZ are going to train workers and the workers are going to get skilled. And that is beneficial for the local communities. And you also can talk of social development. The companies are going to invest in the society. For example, by introducing education, building schools, or building clinics, providing health care. That is beneficial for the local communities. So these are positive implications or positive impacts of the IDZ on the local communities. Jobs are created, the economy grows, and infrastructure is developed. The people in the local communities acquire skills through training from the companies which are operating in the IDZ. Or we can talk of social development, whereby they take social corporate responsibility by providing education, building schools, and providing clinics, and also donating to the poor. That is social corporate social responsibility by the businesses operating in the IDZ. Right, then you can also look at the negative, because we said impacts, we're not limiting ourselves to one side. They can also have negative impacts, like you can talk of environmental concerns. The business activities might be harming the environment. It might be causing negative environmental implications on the society. That is a negative implication. For example, pollution. The activities happening might be causing air pollution or noise pollution or water pollution. That is an environmental concern. It's a negative implication. Or we can talk of displacement of the communities. If there is maybe need for expansion, it means the expansion will encroach into former settlements, and those settlements are supposed to be displaced. That is a negative implication. Or if there's an infrastructure development project, for example, there's a new road network being constructed, there are people to be displaced to pave way for the road construction. That is a negative implication on the society or on the community. Or we can talk of increased cost of living. Because of the increasing numbers of people in that particular area who will come to work in these industries, and also because of the levels of income which are high for the people who are gainfully employed, that is going to push prices up, and the local communities are going to suffer because of the increase in prices, because of the increased economic activities happening in the area. So at the end, it's a negative implication. Or you can talk of strain on local resources. There's going to be over exploitation of the local resources in the area, which is also not good for the local community. Then you can also talk of loss of local traditional livelihoods. The way of life, which is traditional, is going to be destroyed. For example, if there's now commercial fishing and people used to do their traditional fishing, practicing their own traditional and cultural fishing methods, those are going to become extinct, and which is a negative implication on the society. They lose their traditional way of livelihood due to the transition from it being a traditional society to becoming an industrialized society, whereby the way of life now has to be done in a more civilized and modern way. So that is also a negative implication on the society. So we look at both the positive and the negative implications of the development of industries in that particular industrial estate, which is the Saldanha Bay. Right. We move on to the next question, which is question number 2.5, which is the last section of question number 2. It's based on the industrial region of Gauteng PWV, right, which is the hub of South Africa's industrial sites or industrial region, right? The infographic is given there, is giving a map of the Gauteng PWV, and it's also giving an info graphic of people who are looking for jobs in the informal sector and the composition of PVW, and also it's talking about a text on the percentages of employment in the different sectors. Right. Let's move on to the next question. Identify the industrial region shown in the infographic. Definitely, we've discussed about that. This industrial region is definitely the Gauteng, Pretoria, Witwatersrand, and PWV. Right. We move on to the next question. According to the infographic, how many people are currently employed in the informal sector? Our response, we pick it here. Additionally, 3.8% work in the growing informal sector. So that 3.8% is the number of people who are working in the informal sector. Which employment sector of the industrial region mentioned in 2.51 employs the most people? Again, we check here. Which one employs the most people? We can check it here, or we can check it here. Right. If you see, the financial sector leads at 26.1. Or if you can check here, our financial sector is there with the highest, which is 26.1. So our response is clear. We get it on those two. Then give 2 examples of jobs in the informal sector that are displayed in the infographic. 2 examples of jobs in the informal sector that are displayed in the infographic. Right, we come here. We have a plumber is here. And we have a builder is shown there. And we have a welder is shown there. We have an electrician is shown there. We have a tiler is there, and a paver at the same time. This is a builder, a plasterer, and a rhinolighter at the same time. So those are some of the jobs which are presented there in the which are displayed in the infographic. As you can see there, those different jobs which are being marketed by these people are on the street, definitely marketing for. And also, if you can check here, again, it seems like it's a painter here. It shows like it's written painter. So those are the jobs which are displayed according to that infographic. Right, let's go on to the next one. How can the informal sector help to reduce unemployment rate in the industrial region mentioned in question 251? How can the informal sector help reduce unemployment? Right. The first one here is job creation. Right, what are we saying here? The informal sector can lead to job creation. Right. How does it create jobs? We're saying the informal businesses create jobs. People are employed in the informal businesses. The informal sector comprising of the unregistered businesses, but those businesses are employing people, and those people are gainfully employed and will get an income. So it contributes towards the reduction of unemployment in that manner. And we can also talk of what else besides that. We can talk of entrepreneurship. It's also another contribution towards unemployment. By entrepreneurship, what are we saying here? Individuals in the informal sector, they start own businesses. If a person starts their own business, it means they are now gainfully employed in their own informal businesses. So it facilitates entrepreneurial skills and apparently the creation of businesses and the reduction of unemployment. And also you can talk of skills development. Whereby we have the training. The training of employees. Skills development. People acquire skills in the informal sector, and those skills are equally beneficial to reduce unemployment. People can be trained to do different sorts of trades, and within those trades, they will be able now to acquire formal jobs, and they will be gainfully employed, yet they got the skills from the informal sector. Like if you check these guys who are here, they are in the informal sector, they are doing their own self-jobs. One is an electrician. Apparently, they are going to engage someone to assist them. And the person who is assisting them will not remain an assistant forever, will also learn. The welders, the plumbers, as they do their job, they need assistance, and those assistants are also going to acquire skills. They're also going to get skilled through exposition to the different jobs. And as they get exposed, they will apparently get the skills and also become skilled people in that particular field of work. And at the end, they will also become skilled people in that particular job or in that particular trade. Right. Then let's go to the last question. The last question says, in a paragraph of 8 lines, discuss factors favoring the economic development of the industrial region mentioned in the infographic. Factors favoring economic development of the industrial region in Gauteng, PWV. We know well that is the biggest contributor to the GDP of the country. So what factors are favoring the economic development of this particular industrial region? Right, we can talk of its location. First, it's strategically located. How is it located? It's located centrally. Location is an advantage. It's located centrally, which means it gains an advantage by being located centrally. So we talk of its location, located centrally, which is beneficial to the activities happening here because of its location. The industrial zone is located centrally, is in the midst of the country, which is giving it a strategic advantage. So it's centrally located and it's linked with major transport routes. Because it's on the center, it's linked with the major transport routes go through the industrial region. So its location is strategic and it gives itself an advantage. And then there's a large market. If you check the population size, there is high density population here, which means the products have got a red market. There are so many people staying in the Gauteng region who are prepared to buy the products. And also you can talk of skilled labor force or labor force in general, both unskilled and skilled. We have a variety of labor force. A wide range of skills are available and people are willing and able to work for those industries. And also you can talk of universities around which are training people to acquire the skills, or you can talk of training, other training institutions which help people acquire skills that they are employable in the different industries. Then you can talk of infrastructure. The existing infrastructure, the area is already linked with road networks, the rail networks, which are viable and which are fully functional. It's also a supporting factor. And also, if you can check on the natural resources. Natural resources, mainly we are looking at mineral resources. We have a variety of minerals in Gauteng, which facilitates the development of such industries because the raw materials are essential for the viability of the industries. And also you can talk of government support. The government also is doing support maybe through tax incentives so that the industries are able to thrive and be able to compete. And also you can talk of a diversified economy. Right, the region is having a number of industries which will support. So we have various related industries. Some industries act as a market for the other industry. Some industries act as an auxiliary to the other industry. So the industries, they work together because they are in close proximity, they are centralized, and they offer a diverse services which are interlinked. They end up having the advantage of agglomeration and apparently benefiting from the proximity towards each other. So that is also the other factor which promotes the development of this particular industrial region. That brings us to the end of our second question, and that brings us the end to our first section of the paper. Now we have to move on to geographical skills, where we deal with map skills and GIS. Right. For this question here, our map was based on the Thundereduc, which is Vredendal map. The map information is provided there. You cannot read it, but it's most advisable that you, before you attempt the question, make sure that you read the map information, because it will going to assist you in answering some of the questions posed in the map work section. Right. And then what I was supposed to do here, we come here on the first question. What is the name of the closest harbor to Vredendal? That is an extraction question. If you come here, you tend to find that your response is given. You just have to pick your response. The question says, from the nearest harbor at Saldanha Bay. This is our response for the first question. So our question here, the response is Saldanha Bay for the first question. Then, of which Spatial Development Initiative SDI does the town of Vredendal form part? Again, it's an extraction question. You come here, it says the Vredendal is served by the West Coast Rail Line. So the West Coast, we know that this is our SDI for the year, and is located in the Western Cape region, where we also find this Vredendal area. So is the West Coast for that one. Move on to the next question. Vredendal is connected to the National Road N7 by, this is again an instruction question. You can come here. National roads are by R63362 and R363. That is a typical extraction question. You don't need to struggle. The responses are already provided for you. So you just have to pick the right responses based on your extraction from the given text. So this is clear. We just come here and just pick it from there. So we go on to the next response, which is the next question. The next question is based on the question on land use located at that particular section, 31 degrees, 38 minutes and 45 south, and 18, 31 and 19 to the east. So when we are looking at that, we tend to find that there is need for us to do some calculations whereby we have to calculate the exact location of that particular point based on the given coordinates on the map. So what we need to do there, we need to do a calculation of our grid square based on the measurements of our grid on the map. So if we measure here, you check the illustration of what we're going to do. We need to find the location of 31 degrees, 38 minutes to the south and 24 seconds. Then there's 18 degrees, 31 minutes and 19 seconds to the east. Right. Those are the coordinates for that particular point. And those other 2 points are given already. The other 2 points, the other two factors to that allocation are given. The degree value is given, the minute value is given. What is not given is the second value on the map. That is the one that we need to calculate on. And also we need to calculate from the second value for the line of longitude. So if we come here, our 31 degrees is here, our 38 seconds, our 38 minutes is given there, which means our 31 degree and 38 minute line is along this line here for latitude. Then if we come for longitude, it says 18 degrees and 31 minutes. So our 31 minutes, it means if this is 30-minute line, the next line increasing going to the east is going to be 18 degrees, 31 minutes. So this is our line for the 31st minute line of longitude. So when we're picking our coordinates, we need the northwest corner, which means our referral point for this particular block is this particular corner here, where we find our degree value and our latitude and our degree value for longitude. Then what we need to do for us to find the exact position of our latitude now, minute, second line, we measure from here, the beginning of the block, until the end of the block here. we find the distance. And for us to get the location of that exact position, we express it as a fraction of 60 because there are 60 lines of latitude from this line of 38 to the line of 39 south. So what we do here is like we are saying in our calculation, it's we need to get the location of 24 seconds. And we know that there are 60 seconds from here until we get there. And we measured this length here. We found out that it's 3.7 centimeters. So 3.7 centimeters, if you want to locate the position of 24 seconds, how many centimeters are we supposed to mark it out of the 3.7? It's now 24 seconds out of 60 seconds. We multiply by 37 centimeters. To get the centimeter position where we get our 24 seconds. This is going to give us 1.48 centimeters. This is for latitude. Then we go to longitude. To longitude, we are saying our longitude in our position is 19. So if it's 19, it's 19 out of 60 for the length of the block from the longitude line to the next longitude line. So if we measure here, we have measured here, we got our length as 3.7 centimeters. We have measured from here to here, we got our length as 3.2 centimeters. So if we want to locate the location of 19 seconds, it's 19 seconds out of 60 from here to here. So for longitude, it becomes 19 over 60. We multiply by the length of the block, which is 3.2 centimeters. And we are going to get it as 1 centimeter. Rounding it off, it's 1.0 something, then we just round it to 1. Then which means for us to find the line of latitude for 24 seconds, we measure 1.48 from the origin to somewhere there. If our 1.48 is there, it means we have to draw it there. This is our 24-second line of latitude. Then we go to longitude, we measure 1 centimeter from the origin of longitude here. If 1 centimeter is coming there out of the 3.2, it means we draw it there. Then we find what feature is there on the intersection of those two. That is how we get the location of the feature. So by mere estimation or based on what we are doing there, our land use feature constitutes to be this feature here. What is this feature? Based on our key, this is a graveyard. If we can look from the key, this is a graveyard. Right. That is how we get and how we calculate those markings and how we get the location of an exact position of that particular space occupied by those coordinates. Right, we move on to the next question. The next question is based on gradient calculation, and we are given the two features. The two features are provided. What you need to do there is to be accurate enough when you're doing your calculations, because the calculations for vertical interval are already done for you. You only need to calculate the horizontal equivalence for the two places. Right. You have to calculate between a spot height in trig station 167 in A1 and trig station in A4. If you check on the map here, trig station in A1, this is our trig station, according to what you can see here. This one here, 167. And in A4, this is our trig station given here. So our vertical interval, remember, is the difference in height between the two given points. It was calculated for you. What you need to do is to get the horizontal equivalence. From here, you measure the straight line distance to here. Measure this distance using a ruler. And remember yourself, measure from the center of the triangle if you're doing your measurements. Don't measure from the angle of the triangles, but measure from the center of the triangle. If you measure accurately, my measurement here is telling me that the distance is 9.1 centimeters, according to my measurement that I'm getting here. And remember, this is in centimeters. You need to convert it to a meter calculation. So we are saying 9.1, you multiply it by the map scale, which is 500 meters. we are getting our map scale from 1 to 50,000. Remember, it's a topographic section. So 500, 1 to 50,000, we convert it to meters, is 500 meters. So we multiply directly. 1.9.1 times 500 meters. What do we get? We get 4,450 meters. This is our horizontal equivalence. Then we come to our formula. Formula is vertical interval over horizontal equivalence. Our vertical interval is being calculated for us. We are told that is 14.9. It's already in meters, and we put our vertical or horizontal equivalence in meters, 4,450 meters. Then what do we do here if we're having these two? Gradient, we don't solve to create a decimal, but we want to make the numerator unit or make it equal to 1. What do we do to make the numerator equal to 1? The meter is going to cancel with the meter. We remain with digits only. We divide this by 14.9 and also divide this by 14.9. 14.9 divided by 14.9, it gives us 1 over the result of this one here, the product of the result of this division here. It gives us 305.37. Right. So our ratio becomes 1:3 or 5.37, or if you can round it off. That is the gradient for that particular, those 2 points. I'll move on to the next question. Question number B. Right. This is the gradient calculation between the 2 points. We need to move on to the next question after this gradient question. Let's check the next question, which is item number B, based on the same question. Right. Item number B, it says, what is the question saying? Item number B, right. It says, does your answer to question 315 favor the location of a landing strip in block A3 on the topographic map? If you check the landing strip, the answer, does your answer in favor the location of the landing strip on the topographic map? Right. Our answer here is 1:3 is 1:2. The bigger denominator, it means that the area is gently sloping. So does it favor? How does your answer in A favor the location of a landing strip? Right. The area is gently sloping. According to the gradient interpretation, if the numerator is big, if you have a bigger denominator, it means the area is gentle. So area is gently sloping. Which what is the benefit of a landing strip being located on a gently sloping landscape? It allows for safe landing and takeoff planes. The landing strip there, it means it's going to be, it's a gently sloping landscape. And how does it qualify to be a suitable, or how is it favorable? It allows for safe landing. Planes cannot safely land on a steep sloping landscape. They need to land on a gently sloping or on a flat land. So it's safer for landing and safer for taking off. Or it's also safer for pilots to maintain control. The pilot's control is easier if the area is gently sloping. That's the qualification of the landing strip being located in that particular geographical space. Then let's go to the next question, number 321. Number 321 is talking about, so number 3.2.1 is talking about the pattern which is visible in that particular block. It says, name the street pattern at X in block A2, right? We go to our map, we check on block A2. Block A2 is this one, our X is there. We want to analyze the street pattern around this area here. What kind of pattern is here around X? This qualifies to be a rectangular pattern. This is typical of a rectangular pattern around that area. So we can safely say this area is having a rectangular street pattern, right? Then the next question, it says, Provide evidence from the topographical map that supports the construction of the street pattern mentioned. What topographical information do we have in this area which supports the construction of a rectangular pattern in that area? Right, we are looking at the topography of the area. The area is generally flat. And how is it that beneficial? It's for easy construction and navigation of the pattern. Of straight streets. It's easy to construct straight streets when the area is flat. And also the area has got minimal to no relief changes. The area has got minimal relief changes, or it is a lack of obstacles. Remember, we cannot implement straight streets where we have maybe, for example, some hilly features or some mountainous areas in that particular area. We need to avoid such relief features. But in this area, those prominent features are not evident there, which means you can easily construct straight streets which have got right angles at their junctions because the area is flat for easy navigation, and also there is minimal relief changes and there are no obstacles noted in that particular area. That is the factors, those are the factors that favors the development of the rectangular pattern in that particular geographical space. Right, we move on to the next question. The next question is on the next question is based on refer to sewage works in 1 in block B4 in the orthophoto map and block B3 on the topographic map, right? Why does this land use appear larger on the orthophoto than on the topographic map? Right, we are saying the sewage here is appearing larger and there it's appearing smaller. Why is it like that? Right, the reason is an orthophoto is a large scale map. That's the reason. The orthophoto is a large scale map. Orthophoto is large scale. The features are enlarged. How many times? 5 times. The scale for the orthophoto map is 1:10,000. And for the topographic map is 1:50,000. So if you are comparing this scale, this is a small scale, this is a large scale. How big is this from this? This is 1/10,000. If you were to calculate exaggeration, times 50,000 over 1, which is going to give us 5. So this scale is 5 times bigger than this, which means the features on the topographic map are 5 times smaller than they appear on the orthophoto map. Because an orthophoto is a large scale map, the features are enlarged 5 times more than how they are appearing on the orthophoto, on the topographic map. Which land use zone is the sewage works? Obviously, this is the rural urban fringe. That is where we find the sewage works. It's located in the rural urban fringe. Provide evidence for the topographical map support that the statement that the sewage works is ideally located. How is it strategically located and correctly located? Right, if you check on the map, it's located away from settlements. For it has health hazards. Or you can talk of the bad smell coming from the sewage works. So if you check here, our sewage works is located ideally, is very far away from built up areas. If you can check on the topographic map, and also if you can check it on the orthophoto map, you can see that the sewage is located relatively away from the built up area. It's located, like if you check here, the sewage is here, it's located here. And the built up area is ending here, which means it's located ideally away from the residential area because of it having a health hazard and also because of the smell which is going to come from its location. So that is the response to that question. Right, we move on to what are the factors making solar production possible in this area. If we check here, there's a solar solar power which is located there and is indicated. What are the factors which favor the location of that solar power plant on that particular area? Right, we can talk of number one, is close to existing infrastructure. If you check the existing infrastructure there are road networks. This in block A1. Let's go to the map. In block A1, definitely somewhere here. Right, we can talk of existing infrastructure. There's this road network here, which is already there. It is beneficial to access the power plant, which means it's also a favoring factor. And also, if you check, it's also space available. This whole area here is free space, whereby they can expand the power plant. So it's availability of free space for expansion. And also, we can talk of sufficient amount of sunlight. This area is clear. It's a clear area, which means that there is sufficient irradiance or sufficient amount of sunlight received in that particular area. This is a clear area. And also, if you check, it's also close to transmission line. If you check here, there is a transmission line which is running around there. If you also need to incorporate the grid there, we can also use the existing transmission line. So basically, those are the factors that favor the power plant being located in that block. Move on to the next question. The next question is talking about suggests an economic advantage of solar power park in the business in Vredendal, right? One is reduced energy costs. The energy costs are going to be reduced. That is one advantage. To lower the bills. Electricity is more expensive compared to solar, which means they are going to get less bills. And also you can talk of increased energy independence. Energy independence, meaning to say they don't depend on the grid, but rather they have their own supply of power. They don't rely on the grid. And also there's energy security. Energy security, meaning to say when the grid goes off, they will still be having power. When the grid is in outage, the normal supply is going on an outage, they can still be able to access electricity. So those are some of the benefits to the businesses in that particular area for having that solar power plant close to them located there. Then we go to the last section. Our last section is the GIS section, which brings us to the end of the paper, right? The GIS section is made up of some few questions. Number 3.31 is talking about the landing strip is an example of, is it a human-made or a natural feature? That is clear. A human-made is something which is made by man, and natural is something which exists by nature. So a landing strip is actually a constructed feature, which means it's a human-made feature. Then the GIS process describes the demarcation of a landing strip. Demarcation, that is buffering. When we're doing demarcation, we're buffering a particular geographical space. Is the above photograph an example of a high or low oblique area photograph? If we check this photograph here, you can actually see that it's covering a relatively smaller area and does not show the horizon. So this qualifies to be a low oblique area photograph. A high oblique will cover a wide area and will show the horizon, while a low oblique will cover a relatively smaller area and does not get to the horizon. So this one is a low. We go to the next question. With reference to block C4 and C5, C4 and C5 on the topographic map, identify one infrastructure data layer that was considered by GIS specialists when developing the mines. Right, we go to block C4 and C5. We see block C4 is here and C5 is there. We have these mines here, these mining activities happening here in these two blocks. Which data layers were considered for that location of those mines? One, we can talk of a drainage layer. They have to consider the water sources. so that they can locate the mines strategically. And also, they have to consider a layer on topography. The slope of the area has to be considered. And also, they can consider the layer on geology. Geology, then we'll go to the next question. They are closely linked. The next question is saying, why was it important for the GIS specialists to consider the layer that we have identified? Why is it important to consider geology? They need to consider the nature of rocks. They need to check for mineral-bearing rocks. They have to consider the rocks so that they are able to figure out if they are going to extract the mineral from the underlying rock. So they have to consider the geology and also the topography. They have to consider gently sloping landscape for mining. For mining activities. To operate the machines, we need to operate them on a gently sloping landscape. We cannot do effective mining on steep sloping landscapes. Then on drainage, the water influence on mining. We cannot mine in a river or in a dam. We have to mine on a safer place away from water source. So we have to consider the drainage layer, how the rivers are structured or how the dams and other water sources are structured in the area. So basically that's the reason as to why they have to consider those layers. We move on to the next question. The next question is talking about the picture above is an example of remote sensing. How can remote sensing be used to monitor the impact of the mine on the environment? Remote sensing, we know, is gathering information from a distance. So how can we use remote sensing? We can track changes in vegetation. Changes in vegetation, or soil, or water bodies around the mining areas. For us to monitor the impact of mining, if the vegetation is being affected, we can see through remote sensing, or if the soil or water bodies are being affected, we can track that. And also, what we can do, we can identify soil disturbance. E.g. soil erosion. We can be able to figure out if there is an impact of mining which is causing soil erosion. And also, we can look at sedimentation. Then we can also look at, we can analyze changes in water color, which is also typical of evidence of pollution of water bodies in the area. So we can actually do remote sensing to figure out if the water is changing in its color because of disposal of effluent into the rivers which are surrounding the mining area. Or we can also figure if we can identify if there's any soil disturbance which is happening, for example, soil erosion activities which are being caused by the mining activities. Or we can track the vegetation around the mining area to see if it's being negatively impacted by the mining activities that will be happening in that particular geographical space. So basically, that is the question paper for our 2024 prelim geography paper 2 for Gauteng. Right. Based on the findings, I hope you enjoyed the paper, and we hope that it's going to be a booster towards your final marks for your final metric sitting, because the paper generally, we cannot regard this paper as basically a difficult paper. It was a moderate paper. For an average learner who can actually be in a position to score a very good and distinctive mark in the paper. So it is my hope that we keep on practicing and we keep on revising.